You mentioned earlier that you're fascinated about why bad things happen to good people. What's your understanding of that?
That's the $1 billion question. I don't have an understanding. I think it's in the mysteries of life and death. I think trying to rationalize or explain suffering, human suffering, is a futile effort because I think it's beyond the mind. The way I would put it is the most brilliant mind cannot speak to a bleeding heart. So let's get beyond the philosophy here. When you're in the presence of someone who's had a loss, a death, a premature death, and everybody should be protected from this. But inevitably and unfortunately, there things happen, tragedies. I don't think you're trying to look for an explanation and tell the person, oh, you know why your child, God forbid, was killed in a car accident. I don't think it's the wise thing to do is to try to explain it and say, okay, there's a reason. Here's the reason. Reason is just simply inadequate. And it's simply the recognizing that with humility that we don't understand everything. That's why you'll find in the Torah and Judaism, the response in all cases of the question of good people suffering, why would a good God, is always silence. Silence. Not because silence is acquiescence or surrender or weakness, because there's no words. What are you going to say? There was a great rabbi that said, even if God would come and want to explain to me why the Holocaust happened, why 6 million innocent Jews, 1.5 million children went up in the crematoriums in smoke. Even if God wanted to explain it to me, I wouldn't want to hear. What am I going to hear? Some rationalization. So I think facing that abyss, if you wish, that dark place, is a very unique, a very sacred thing. I don't think intelligence works. I look at it this way. We're not looking for an answer why it happened. You're looking for strength, what to do about it, how to build, how to get through it, how to become stronger in the broken places. So that is the approach that I take personally, and also whenever I counsel or deal with people. And that to me is the only real respectful way. Anything else is inadequate. So I don't have an answer. I will say this. When Job, the great suffering Job in the Bible, confronts God for his suffering and says to God, why? Why should good people suffer? And there's one verse that really always, I don't know, for some reason it speaks to me. Hopefully it'll speak to you and to your listening audience. And God says to him, you asked me that question, were you there when I created heaven and earth? In other words, the beginning of it all, the plan, that you asked me that question? Essentially paraphrasing that, I would say, God is saying, you asked me why there's death, but do you ask me why there's birth? You ask me why there's sadness. Do you ask me why there's joy? You ask me why there's suffering, but you ask me why there's life. In other words, we bring up the questions when things aren't working the way we want them to work, but we rarely ask the question when things are going well. Because that we expect and we take that for granted. In other words, what God is saying is death is linked with life, because if there was no life, there would be no death. If we were not here, if we were never put on this earth, we would have no pain, we'd have no suffering. So to really understand it, you have to really understand why we're here. And that, in that bigger mystery, we can begin to somewhat address this issue. And what I see, people who have suffered greatly and have come through it well, strong. There are people who are devastated by it, obviously. There's one consistent thing. In words of Viktor Frankl, they had deeper meaning in life. There was some type of meaning, some deeper purpose that didn't let them, that didn't cause less suffering, but it gave them an additional resource, additional tools to be able to transcend even their pain by recognizing there must be deeper purpose to life, and allowed them to forge ahead and become stronger despite their loss.
How does one find deeper meaning and purpose in their life?
Well, you begin by asking the question, by not allowing yourself to be distracted by all our petty and temporary survival concerns. If you're busy all day with your own personal pleasures and your own ego and making money, it's all important for survival. But you need to make time for your soul. You need to make time for asking this very question, why am I here? I find that most people just don't give it the time because either they get too busy, too distracted, too overwhelmed by other responsibilities. Sometimes good responsibilities, frankly, family issues or livelihood, providing for themselves, for their families. But the bottom line is you get so busy. It's like who is it, John Lennon, that said that life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. So things just take over, and then your life becomes a life of routines, and it's very hard to get out of that rut. And you really need to stop and just pause like anything and say, create space and say, why am I here in the first place? Why am I doing all of this? I can't tell you how many people I ask, who are you? Who are you? And they give me their business card. And I say, that's what you do. That's not who you are. And some people will respond with a sigh. What shall I say? They say, Rabbi Jacobson, what shall I say? I've been doing it so long, what I do has become who I am. And I always point out, who you are should dictate what you do. But I think that's the issue. It's not that, it's almost like almost all beautiful things in life, you're not going to find it somewhere on a mountain or in a bookshelf. It's right here. It's right inside you. But you have to cut away the excess and the distractions. It's like there's a music in your soul, but if you're busy in the rush hour of your life and busy on the merry-go-round or roller coaster, you're not going to hear the music. So to me, it really comes down to, first, let's lower the volume, create space, ask yourself that. I mean, one of the beautiful things of Shabbat in Jewish tradition, it's a day where we try to unplug. You shut down the machines, you shut down your devices. It's a day to speak to your loved ones, think about yourself, introspection, soul searching. I've never seen another method. I mean, there's no school of thought out there that says to meditate or in any way to find inner meaning. You need to create space. And if you're not ready to create space, it's very difficult to do. Now, unfortunately, talking about loss, it's often a loss or a disruption of our comfort zones that is the catalyst for deeper introspection. When things are going well, we always say, hey, there's always tomorrow. I don't need to do anything. So it's often when we are uncomfortable that to get out of our comfort zones, that's when we start seeking and looking. That's when people start asking for meaning. I can tell you, I run a Meaningful Life Center. When there's crisis, when there's war, during COVID, now the war is going on in Israel, other places. That's, I don't like to say it, but that's when our organization booms. People then are vulnerable and very seeking. They're not taking their life for granted. They're looking for something deeper. When you're uncertain, that's when disruptions create search, create seeking.